Top tips. Number one, move your body. So we do not feel like movement when winter comes. We just often want to hide under the duvet, stay in bed. Move your legs. Your mind will follow. The things that can make us feel better don't need to cost money. They don't need to take time. We just need to be intentional about them. And if you are struggling, please, please, please do not struggle alone. Please seek help. Practitioner Health is here if you are a health or care professional. We are here to look after you and care for you and treat you.
Welcome to the Choice Space podcast. I'm Dr. Lee David, GP, CBT therapist and author. In today's episode, we're talking about finding a way through low mood in the winter months. Shorter days and less light can affect our mood, energy and motivation. And it can make everyday tasks and our routines just feel a bit harder to keep up. We often keep going with work and our responsibilities, but some of the activities that usually support us, like movement, connection and time outdoors, can start to fall away. The new year can add extra pressure. We might expect ourselves to push forward or make changes at a time when our capacity is perhaps even lower. And when our expectations don't match what we're able to manage, it's easy to feel stuck or frustrated. This episode will explore how we can notice what's happening, make some helpful and realistic choices, and knowing when to reach out for more support. I'm delighted today to be joined by Dr. Helen Garr, Medical Director at NHS Practitioner Health. She brings extensive experience in supporting people through challenging times in their lives. Helen, huge welcome. Could you start by introducing yourself and sharing a little about Practitioner Health and your role there?
Thank you for having me, Lee. Yes, so my name's Dr. Helen Garr. I am a GP by background, and prior to that, I was a nurse. Prior to that, I was a psychologist, and I'm now the medical director of NHS Practitioner Health. So we are a national, confidential mental health and addiction treatment service for health and care workers in the NHS who face a barrier to seeking confidential care through local services. And we've seen almost 40,000 NHS staff, mainly doctors, but other NHS staff as well, in the 17 years that we've been going. As you say, lots and lots of experience of the kind of challenges that people face, both as healthcare workers, but as humans and people going through life.
I'm also one of the team within NHS Practitioner Health and really proud to be a part of a service which I think offers so much support to a group who really are under pressure, caring for others, working under pressure. And it's challenging times, isn't it, Helen?
Absolutely. Regardless of where you're working right now, I see across the board, just in life, pressures are huge. We're all facing so many challenges just to get through daily life at the moment. But the NHS specifically, people are just facing enormous challenges in their day-to-day work. And obviously that has knock-on effects on our mental health. Whether you're a patient or whether you're working in healthcare, we all deserve the best care. So a lot of what Practitioner Health does is enable people who might be suffering with poor mental health or stress at work, for example. We enable people to get better and to work at their best so they can deliver the care that their patients deserve, but also that they deserve.
I think what's also really helpful to highlight the really high numbers of health professionals who have been supported through the service. And there's real hope, isn't there, that people do recover and there are really positive outcomes.
Absolutely. Our outcomes blow me away. And as you said at the beginning, we're also proud to work in this service and support our colleagues as well who come to us for treatment and support. I often say we're credited with not just saving lives, but saving careers. We keep people in work, but also allow them to rediscover the joy of the job that they love, which I think for many people we can lose that joy and that passion. It becomes a day-to-day almost survival to get through.
There's something there that really comes through about the culture of the organisation, that idea about being held, feeling supported, feeling heard, feeling understood. And I think there's probably something that we can take away, all of us, whatever industry, whatever workplace we're in. It really feels like that is really fundamental to how we can operate positively in whatever system we're in.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things I see that I've brought to practitioner health as a medical director is that whole value and approach around psychological safety, around compassionate leadership. Those values and bringing those approaches into our daily work really do make a difference to develop that kind of space where people feel held and got each other's back. It's around connection with the people that we work with. And when we start to be interested in the people we're working with, sometimes we get to like them, which is always a bonus. And you can only develop trust when you get to know each other. Once you've got trust, you then develop psychological safety. And that's where the real magic happens. That's where people can go to work and they know their colleagues have got their backs. We know we can make mistakes, we can get things wrong, and we're not going to be vilified for it. We're going to learn from it. We're all going to work together.
It's that the respectfulness, it's the communication, and it builds relationships, doesn't it? If we're tired and a bit cranky, but actually we're measured in how we then respond to that, it's not often the what, it's the how we relate to these pressures. And I think that's so important for maintaining psychological safety, as you say.
It's easy for that to go out of the window when we're all under pressure and we're working really hard and we're tired. I try to keep that at the forefront of my mind. In fact, there's something I do. In fact, I got this from Rachel Morris, who's also got that podcast, You Are Not a Frog. When you are at your worst, how would somebody who knows you well describe you in 3 words when you are at your worst? So for me, I moan a lot. I'm not clear in my thinking. I lack confidence. And then flip it. How would someone who knows you really well describe you when you're at your best? So when I'm at my best, I am smiling, I'm having fun, I am open, I'm responsive, and I'm clear in my thinking, I'm confident. I have those 3 words of when I'm at my best on 3 post-it notes on my wall. And then when I'm feeling under pressure, when things are hammering me, I just take a breath, take a pause, look at my 3 words. Like, how would best Helen be responding now? Because I've been there where worst Helen has responded and it hasn't ended well. So I try to remind myself of how I am when I'm at my best and how I can respond as best Helen to try and always create those conditions of civility.
I love it. And I love the idea of bringing Beth Lee to work today. The worst one can stay at home. It almost feels like, you can put on a cloak, the Beth Lee cloak, and that means it's not faking it. Sometimes people say, I don't want to fake it. And there's something about authenticity, but it's about, my wise self would want to be those qualities. I would want to embody those qualities. It's not that they're not me. It's just that they can get hijacked when I'm a bit emotional, if I'm tired, and so it feels very congruent with being real, but actually choosing which version of yourselves we would like to take the lead, I suppose, in a difficult situation.
Absolutely. And it's all about when we're stressed, when we're under pressure. So you use the word hijack. People might have come across this term amygdala. Hijacks the amygdala, the part in our brain that helps us manage our emotions and respond to stress. That when our amygdala reacts for us automatically, that's when our best self doesn't always come to the fore. But actually, we can stop that amygdala hijack by just taking a pause, taking a breath, reminding ourselves it's not faking it. It's giving yourself a pause to allow yourself to respond rather than react in that situation. And it's a skill. And then that also leads to this concept called emotional contagion or social contagion. So we know that how we act and behave and our emotions, they literally are contagious. They leak out. So if you go to work, it doesn't matter if you're a leader, it doesn't matter what your role is, if you're going into work and you are all moaning and stressed and rubbish outside and I hate this job and I can't stand everybody I work with, that literally will be contagious in your team. You are conscious of how you present yourself, and it's not about faking it, actually just noticing the little things. Actually, I'm really lucky to work with you people, and did anyone see the sunrise this morning? I know this all sounds a bit daft. Just if you come in as your best self, that is literally contagious. So that spreads throughout teams. And I try to be mindful of that, but I don't always manage it. We're all human. A phrase I also keep in mind is from one of our brilliant psychiatrists who works with us at Practitioner Health, Caroline Walker. She talked about permission. So I give myself permission to. How does that sentence end for you? I give myself permission to. to eat well, to take a short break, to go to the toilet when I need to take a nap when I'm tired, to, go for a run, or to see my friends, to call in sick if I'm poorly, whatever it is. However that sentence ends for you, I think it's worth holding on to that internal civility and that kindness.
That's so important. And I think it would be wrong not to really draw on some of your expertise, Helen, around some of these workplace issues, because I know that's an area that you're so knowledgeable. Let's think about winter, because actually I think all the stuff we're talking about gets amplified often in the winter months. Are there any changes in the service in terms of how people engage in the winter months?
Absolutely. So what we see really mirrors what happens in the wider populations. In the winter months, particularly in January, February, we will see higher numbers of people coming into us. The people who access us the most are women between the ages of 30, 39, and they're what we call, the squeeze middle. So often women who are progressing in their career, so they're under a lot of stress, often in leadership roles, might be having specialty exams or new consultant posts, for example, if they're doctors, often got young children that they're managing, older parents that might be relying on them, juggling mortgages and schools and nurseries and high pressured careers. And on top of that, we know if you're working in health and care, then the pressures of work in the winter months go up hugely. So we see people who are often depressed, low mood, anxious, struggling with work. We see a lot of relationship issues coming in the winter months as well. So, what we see, our numbers rise, and it reflects really what everyone listening to this podcast might be nodding along saying, I'm feeling a bit of that too in my day-to-day life.
Yeah, so it sounds like really in the winter months, there's a genuine shift in terms of people do struggle with mood, relationship challenges become compounded, the pressures of life and work can seem to accelerate. So it feels like there's a lot of external pressure. And then internally, perhaps our resources are at a lower ebb, maybe relating to there's less light. There might be some seasonal impact. We go to work in the dark, we come back in the dark. We're not seeing that sunshine that lifts us. There's illness within the NHS in terms of increased winter pressures. There's also illness at home, which may be more significant in the winter months. And they can also affect your resilience to mental health conditions, can't they?
Winters in the UK can be really tough. I mean, it's pretty much grey a lot of the time, isn't it? People might have heard of SAD, seasonal affective disorder, and the lack of light is key. So animals who hibernate in winter are evolutionary body clocks want us to hibernate. And if you are in a high pressure job where it's impossible for you to get outside and get some daylight, essentially your brain, your bodies aren't being exposed to any light at all. And light is key for our circadian rhythms. And actually just a couple of years ago, I said, I am actually going to take all the pressure off myself over winter. I'm going to do all the things that I know will keep me well, but I am going to allow myself to hibernate a little bit. I'm going to allow myself to not have to put all the pressure on myself to socialize, because I know I'm not going to feel quite so good in winter. And the January blues, the reason we have that term is because it is really quite normal to have that dip, to want to sleep more, gain a bit of weight, we're eating more stodgy foods, we want to stay inside, we're less motivated to do things. But like I say, lots of things we could do to try and hack that.
I think that idea of permission, it feels like as a balancing act, isn't there? Because it is possible that when we get quite down, that we let a lot of stuff go, our motivation drops and we really lose enthusiasm and we're not doing as much as perhaps would be good for us. I often think about a seesaw of pressures, and on the other end, we might put ourselves under massive pressure, and you look around on social media and people have all got these amazing New Year's resolutions, and perhaps there's an expectation. I wonder if there's something around the Christmas period brings a lot of comparisons, a sense of, is everyone doing better than me? And then when it perhaps is harder, maybe our body is needing time to actually lower energy activity to do that hibernation. But we're expecting ourselves to be full octane, getting out there, achieving everything. I wonder if there's a mismatch there that can also cause challenges.
Absolutely. And I like that seesaw analogy, because it is about finding that balance between giving yourself permission to do what you need, what your body needs. There is the temptation to hibernate too much, and it can be very easy to slip into isolating yourself, which is absolutely not good for us. On the other hand, we've got that typical January, new year, new me, these are my goals. And, if you're on social media, it is absolutely flooded with this pressure to succeed. And I think also many of us, me included, did that thing before Christmas where we were like, this can wait till the new year. And then suddenly you find yourself in the new year with all these things that you've put off, and it can feel quite overwhelming. So there definitely is a balance between what is achievable and what you're motivated to do, and doing things that do get you out there and keep you well, but also not putting too much pressure on yourself. For many people, it's a big high over Christmas, lots of activity, lots of things going on, lots of socializing. Then there's a sudden drop in January. But for other people, Christmas is a really difficult time, and that can impact on how we go into January. I think it's easy to underestimate how difficult Christmas can be for many people, and what you said about comparing with other people. So you see people having these perfect Christmases. They might have, lots of presents, lots of money to spend, family around. If you've had difficult times, if you might have lost somebody, I think it's really important to acknowledge that this time of year can be incredibly difficult, and that can have ongoing effects into the new year.
Yeah, so it really feels like what's important as a starting point for us as an individual is to take a pause and notice what is going on for me. What are my unique pressures? Is it that there's a lot going on? Is it that I have lost somebody and I'm grieving? Is it that my inner critic is giving me a hard time and comparing me to all the other people I'm seeing, and actually I'm feeling like I'm not living up to some version that I'm supposed to be? I'm putting myself under pressure. Or is it that actually I am quite isolated? I've been so busy with perhaps work that I'm not doing things that bring me joy. I've let those things go, and maybe my mood's dipping and I'm really not feeling very motivated. I mean, a lot of people I would see around this period, it's dipped and dipped and dipped to the point that their fatigue is very high. They're just tired. Their motivation is very low. And so the idea of going to do some of these activities feels really far away, because it's just like, well, I just don't want to do them. And so trying to recognize, is it low mood getting in the way of being able to make healthy choices? In which case we need to recognize that sometimes how do we get through that, versus is it that, no, I've just overcommitted and actually what I really need to do is cut down. So it's quite individual, isn't it?
That's a really good point. And something I talk about a lot is the checking in with yourself that you just mentioned. What we tend to do as humans, we go and go and go and go and go until we crash. And actually, we don't learn the skills or take the time to check in with where we are. Are we about to fall off that cliff? And we know that if we take the time to check in, we can pull ourselves back. So something I talk about a lot is getting into the habit of checking in with yourself every day if possible. You can do it when you're in the shower, when you're cleaning your teeth. Where am I today? Some people have told me they like to use a number scale. Where am I on a scale of 1 to 10? Some people like a colour scale. So am I red? Am I amber? Am I green? Where am I? Somebody told me that they take their phone, and every day in their calendar, they give themselves a number in their phone. So when we get into the habit of tracking where we are every day, it only takes a few seconds. We then can get into the habit of thinking, actually, am I slipping? Am I moving into the orange or the red? What do I need to do to bring myself back into the green? We can start to notice patterns. I know when I don't walk the dog every day, then definitely I start to slip. When we get used to checking in with ourselves, we know where we are. It's thinking about something called a well-being plan. Some of the things that a well-being plan gets us to do is to write down, and we know if we write something down, we're more likely to do it. Things like, what do I need to do every day to stay well? What do I need to do less of to stay well? What do I know if I was to start doing, or have something I've done in the past that helped, would make a difference? What do I need others to do for me? So for me, simple things like making sure I take a 5-minute break to get some daylight, making sure that when I'm not working from home, so when I was working full-time as a GP, making sure I took a lunch with me rather than sending out a screen message saying, has anyone got any food they can lend me? And somebody's bringing me in 5 Quality Street from reception to get me through the day. So, I know that I need to take lunch with me to work in order to stay well. So I think getting into the habit of checking in with ourselves, however that works for you, and then thinking about what are your needs to stay well and keeping them really small and simple can really make a big difference.
I really like that idea of checking in with yourself and noticing. So Richard Duggins is another one of our clinicians at Practitioner Health, and he's written a brilliant book, Burnout Free Working. And he talks about radiators and drains, which I think you can relate not just to burnout, but to really just about well-being. And I think the idea about what kind of activities act as a radiator that warm me, that lift me, that give me a bit of energy in small ways. And then what things deplete me? What are the drains? And I sometimes use an analogy of if I was a car, then what kind of activities would mean that I'm going to the petrol station? And even if it's only like a pound of petrol, which doesn't look very much in the current climate, but actually it's cumulative. And just a few of those little micro fills at the petrol station can really make a difference to mean that we then don't hit the red zone and run out of fuel when we're trying to drive up a hill tomorrow. So I think it's that awareness of what those things are. So I'd like to pick up on what kind of things might be radiators and drains for people, but also before we get to that, when we're checking in, what should we be looking out for that might suggest that we need more support, that it's not just a question of, I need to go out for a walk, but actually I might need to reach out to a service like Practitioner Health, to my GP. It might be a friend or a family member, first of all, but to somebody to say, hey, look, I'm struggling and I think I probably need some more support. So when do you think we should be doing that?
Yeah, and I think it can be really difficult to know yourself. And one of the most common things that people say to me when they come to see me is, I'm sure there's so many more people worse off than me who need this service more than I do. And I'm not sure I should have come here. I think I'm wasting your time. So I think we have a tendency as humans sometimes to ignore things or minimize things and all, and not want to take up anybody's time. So I would say, first of all, if there is any doubt in your mind, if there's any worry, if there's anything you think, actually, I'm struggling a little bit here, seek support as a GP, as a practitioner health doctor. I am always so pleased that anyone comes to me. And actually, when we see people sooner, it's easier to get people better than when we wait too long. So when we get into the habit of checking in with ourselves, if we are consistently feeling low, so numbers on the low side, sitting in the red zone for more than a couple of weeks, then it's probably time to think about, what do I need to do to make a change? If how you are feeling is interfering with your life, so if it's interfering with your function, stopping you doing things, and really that's a sign, I need to speak to somebody here. If other people are worried about you. So if you find family members or colleagues are worried about you, people might just say, oh, you're not quite yourself today. And that in itself actually is something that's really brave for people to do, to say, I've noticed you're not quite yourself. How are you doing? Are you okay? Do you need to have a little nudge to go and get some support? That's a really valuable thing we can do for each other, but we don't always do that. But if somebody has noticed you're not yourself as other people are worried about you, then absolutely, I think it's time to think about, how do I get some support here?
So turning to a serious aspect of low mood that can sometimes be exaggerated in the winter months, people can start to feel quite hopeless. They can start to feel very low. And sometimes that can then lead to more serious thoughts that we are worried about. People start to question whether they want to even continue living. And I'm aware that this is a very sensitive area for people to hear about, but it is an important area, I think, because these are the conversations that we need to be able to have openly so that people are able to raise it. What are your thoughts about that, Helen?
Yeah, thank you for raising that. And it can be really hard to hear about. It can be really hard to talk about. But we know that when mood gets low, particularly over the winter months, it is not that uncommon for people to present with thoughts of feeling like life's not worth living, thoughts that you may be better off dead, or suicidal thoughts. And certainly we do see that at Practitioner Health. A third of everyone who registers with us actually is experienced suicidal thoughts in the 2 weeks before coming to us, and a third of those have made plans to end their life. It is really important that people feel able and know how to seek help. if that is happening to you. It's a horrible place to be, but there is always hope and there is help. And it's incredibly important that you're able to reach out and to speak to somebody. We know that this is so difficult. If you are worried about somebody, it can be really difficult to know how to approach this. Am I going to say the right thing? Am I saying the wrong thing? If you are experiencing thoughts that life's not worth living, it can be difficult to know where to turn or what to do. And actually, we've recently created a fantastic guide on our website, a suicide prevention and postvention, which means what to do after if there has been sadly a suicide, how to support yourself and others. I just want people to know you are not alone and there is always hope, and Practitioner Health are here to support you. So many organisations out there who are able to help and support. Your GP is there. We want to see you if you are struggling. So I would really recommend people take a look at the guide on our website, and please, please, please do reach out if you're struggling. You're not alone.
I sometimes say to people that these thoughts, they're a sign of distress. They're a sign that we're struggling. They're not a sign that they're accurate or that they need to be believed. And it's trying to recognize that this is a sign that I need more care. It's a sign that I need to reach out and feel held rather than the opposite. And I think it's really important to emphasize that it's common to have the thoughts, and it doesn't automatically mean that people are going to go and act on those thoughts. But if they're there, then it's really important to talk about them and to get that professional support with knowing what the next steps should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And things can and will get better with the right support.
This is the Choice Pause, a short 2 to 3 minute tool drawn from my books and online courses that you'll hear in every episode, each time with something different to help you pause, notice and choose your next step. Today's pause is creating space for positive action. Take a slow breath in and a longer breath out. Let your shoulders hang down, soften your jaw and the muscles around your eyes. For a moment, let go of any judgment or expectations about how you should be feeling or what you should be doing right now. When our mood or energy is low, taking action can feel really hard. We might notice there's tiredness, lack of motivation, or unhelpful or negative thoughts. Yet often, action comes before motivation, not the other way round. Bring to mind something that matters to you. Maybe it's your family, health, or a love of the outdoors. Or perhaps it's around values such as curiosity, movement, or connection. Now think about one small action that you could take. Something that would take only a few minutes and feels realistic today. We may be still carrying fatigue, low mood, or doubts with us, and that's okay. We can bring those with us as we choose to step out for a short walk, send someone we care about a quick message, gently move our body, or spend a few minutes doing something creative or absorbing. See if you can treat this as an act of kindness towards yourself. It's not about creating pressure or stress. Just making a start, doing something that matters, and carry that permission with you to start small and choose something that matters to you into the rest of your day.
If you want to perform at your best, if you want to get better, then the way to do that is to have a crew. So Richard Duggins, actually one of the things at Practitioner Health is we just have the most amazing people work for us. It blows me away, the expertise we have in our workforce. But Richard Duggins talks about in his book, who's your crew? So when times are tough, who's your crew? And he talks about that. You know that children's song, head, shoulders, knees and toes. So identify your crew. Who's your head person? Who do you go to when you need to, talk about a problem, sort a problem out? Who's your shoulder person? Who, if you need a shoulder to cry on? Who's your knee person? Who you can have a knees up with? Who you can have fun with and you chew the fat with? We all need to have fun, let off steam. And the toes, who's that person that's going to give you a bit of a kick up the backside and point you in the right direction? I hope I've done that justice to what he says in his book. But I really like that concept of identifying who's your crew. And it might be different people for different things. It might be the same person, but we've got to put the time in with our crew. We can't expect our crew to just suddenly be available when we need them. So I think there's something about cultivating your support network, and putting that time in with the people who are important to you, who you value, who you enjoy spending time with, who bring out the best in you, your head, shoulders, knees and toes people. But sometimes we need professional support. It takes a lot of bravery to stick your hand up and say, I need some support. But we know that with professional support, whether that be your GP, whether you're going to your local talking therapy service, whether it's a professional through your employer in EAP service, or whether that be practitioner health, that when you get professional support, people get better quickly.
I do love that idea of head, shoulders, knees and toes. I'm going to be singing that away. Such a great idea. And I would really encourage people to lean into connections where they feel like connecting with this person feels like it's filling up my petrol tank a bit, because there are other connections that actually feel quite depleting. And I think particularly if we're low or tired or stressed, then actually we might want to reduce contact with in environments where perhaps that is more negative, and try and focus on these uplifting type of interactions.
So I talk about juicy strawberries. You've got a punnet of strawberries in your fridge, beautiful, juicy red strawberries, but there's one mouldy one. Very quickly, that punnet goes mouldy. So I talk about this concept of identifying who's your juicy strawberries, who are the people who make you feel great. And you don't need to have loads of them. But when I did this sort of strawberry audit in my life a few years ago, I was quite surprised actually at people I was spending time with who were draining me, who were depleting me, and I hadn't quite recognized that happening. And I have an actual list. I know who my people are who make me feel good about myself, and I'm intentional about spending time with them. I'm also well aware about the people who might drag me down, and I'm intentional about limiting the time I have with them, or how I approach the time I have with them. Another exercise that's really helpful is the drain and deplete and nourish exercise. And you write down everything you do in a typical day, from getting up in the morning, making the packed lunches, driving to work, turning on your laptop, looking at your appointment list, whatever that might be. You write down every single activity. And then next to each activity, you give that a D, does this drain and deplete me? Or an N, does this nourish me? And then you look at your list and think, all the things that drain and deplete you, how can you either get rid of them, or how can you change them and approach them differently so that they're more nourishing? You look at your nourishing activities and you think, how can I do more of those? How can I be more intentional about when I do this? How do I take notice when that's happening? For me, I did this when I was a full-time GP, and one of my D's was my commute to work. And I just hated my commute to work. It used to take me an hour each way every day, and it just drained me so much. So I reframed my commute to work to, this is an hour just for me, where I can't be interrupted. And I downloaded all my favourite podcasts. I downloaded some lovely music to listen to, some audiobooks. And I reframed that this hour was my hour where I could do things that nourished me. And I started to almost look forward to my commute to work.
There's quite good evidence that behavioural activation is a really effective treatment for when people are low. And that's just about doing more stuff, that not an endless list of stuff, but making sure that we are doing things that are the nourishing activities. And so I sometimes use a mnemonic called SPICE, which is 5 types of activity that I think are important. S is something that brings a small sense of success or achievement. P is some kind of physical movement, moving our bodies. I is something that's important and meaningful. And then C is that connection that you're talking about, that, you know, the head, shoulders, knees and toes. And then E is enjoyable things that are relaxing, listening to the audiobook or doing some knitting, or, you know, sitting outside, enjoying the outdoors. So for you, what kind of activities do you see as being particularly important for helping cut through some of the low mood that can come in the winter months?
So I love your SPICE analogy, actually. So I've similar on the similar lines. I work to the 5 ways to wellbeing model, which are around connect, learn, be active, take notice and give. And the evidence shows us if we do 1 or 2 things from each of the 5 ways to wellbeing a couple of times a week, but every day even better, then we will see demonstrable improvements in our mental health. and well-being. For me, movement absolutely is so imperative. And when I say movement, I'm not talking about gym or running marathons, just simply moving our bodies, we know makes a difference. Every time we move our body, we release chemicals in our brains and in our cells that reduce inflammation and that make us feel happier. And we know that in the hour after moving our body, we're better at problem solving, we're better at remembering things. So for me, I try and prioritize movement. Sometimes it will be as simple as if I'm in a meeting, I can do that standing, keep weights by my desk. It can be very difficult to bring physical activity into our lives because we're all so busy. Time is a big barrier. So something I like around movement is this concept of habit stacking. So you pick something you do regularly, like I drink a lot of tea. So every time I boil the kettle, I do 5 squats. So I stack a habit onto something I do regularly, and it's an easy way to bring movement in. Secondly, connection. So a whole body of evidence about the value of connecting with others. A really famous study is the Harvard study of happiness. And the number one thing that's come out of that study is having close personal relationships makes a massive difference to our mental health and well-being. It's not success, it's not fame, it's not money, it's close personal relationships. So I think cultivating our relationships is really important. And if we're lucky enough to have a spouse or children or family members, it can be really easy to not put the time in with that. So how often do you come home from work and actually you just or just getting into cooking tea or doing whatever, and you haven't taken a minute just to say, how was your day? What went on for you today? So just being intentional about our relationships. But there's also a lot of evidence that actually having small, meaningful interactions with people who aren't in our close personal circle can also make a difference. Chatting with the bus driver or the checkout operator or your colleagues at work, what did you do last night? How's your day going? Those small, meaningful interactions can also make a big difference. We'll go through our day with our heads on our phones, our heads down. We don't make eye contact with strangers. We don't make conversation. I would prescribe for anyone listening to this podcast today, in the next 24 hours, seek out a small, meaningful interaction with somebody. The postman, in fact, my postman came this morning and I had a lovely little chat about the weather. And even if that makes you uncomfortable, just do it as an experiment and see how that makes you feel. So for me, the big ones are movement and connection, getting outdoors. So nature, daylight, really, really important. And Richard Jones, who's our amazing clinical director at Practitioner Health, one of his catchphrases is nature is cheaper than therapy. And you know what? He's absolutely right. And again, there's a whole body of evidence about the power of green and blue spaces on our mental health and well-being. And spend a couple of minutes a day in that green or blue space if you can. But there is evidence that even looking at a picture of nature can have benefits to our well-being. So apparently within 4.5 minutes of looking at a picture of nature, our parasympathetic nervous system is activated. So that's the opposite to our fight or flight, calm and relaxed and feel good about ourselves. So even just changing your screensaver at work or putting a picture on your phone can make a difference.
That's so helpful, Helen, and really powerful. And it sounds like just a little bit about being present. So we might have people around us, but are we present? Are we bringing our attention and focus just for a few minutes to that interaction? And I try and often have a chat with the supermarket delivery driver who brings our shopping as I'm lugging in all the shopping. But it's just really lovely. You just have a little chat about their day and how things have been going. And it's small but important.
The taking notice is the key. So if we are aware that actually having a meaningful small interaction with somebody makes a difference, what then gives you real impact is taking notice. So actually I had that small interaction. This is how it made me feel. Just being present. If you're outdoors, you might be standing at the bus stop and there's some trees nearby. Just taking notice of what is going on around you and appreciating this is what really makes a difference. I think the other thing I wanted to say is one of the things that really helps me is at the end of every day, I try and think to myself, how did I make a difference? So this is the 5 ways to well-being, the give, the random acts of kindness, doing things for other people without the expectation of anything in return we know makes us feel great. That is where we get real purpose and value. Taking notice of where did I make a difference today? And I'm going to give you one example of many, many, many years ago. My son was quite poorly and he was admitted to the hospital where I worked as a junior doctor. I observed a consultant on the ward who wasn't looking after my son. He just worked on the ward, making the biggest difference to my family. And he would never have known, really, he did this. He was walking onto the ward at the same time as my husband. And he just stopped and he held open the door for my husband. And I watched this happen and he just went, "How are you doing?" And my husband, "Fine, thank you." And my husband was so grateful that someone had just opened the door for him, asked him how he was, let him in. And it was so impactful for us because it was such a difficult time for us. We were tired, we were worried. And just that small act of kindness of you holding the door open for a patient's father, just how are you doing? You didn't know us, you didn't know anything about our circumstances, but that made a big difference. And we still talk about it 16 years later. And he was like, "Wow, I had no idea." So I think taking notice of where we can make a difference and being intentional about what we do in our day, even when it's tiny, tiny little things like we checked in on a colleague or we held a door open for somebody, that can be huge for our well-being. And I try and prioritize those kind of things, especially over winter.
So, Helen, I think we probably really could keep talking all morning about this, but to finish, we always do a choice-based takeaway, which is just 1 or 2 small steps people could do to try over the next few days or weeks to support their mood or to lift their mood in the winter months.
Top tips. Number 1, move your body. So we do not feel like movement when winter comes. We just often want to hide under the duvet, stay in bed. Move your legs, your mind will follow. So move your body, however that may be. It might be doing some star jumps in between patients. It might be doing some squats when you're boiling the kettle. It might be just standing in a meeting, taking a walking meeting, just parking your car a little bit further away in the car park to walk to work, taking the stairs instead of the lift. Number 2, get light into your day. It is so easy to go all day without seeing any natural daylight. Light in your mornings, dark in your evenings. That's the best way to get some sleep. If we sleep well, we cope better. So just even a few minutes every morning by a window or having a cup of coffee at the back door, even on a grey day, allows us to absorb that light, to allow us to feel more alert, more awake, get some daylight into every day. And if you can bring some green spaces or blue spaces, some nature into your day and take notice of that, even more important. Number 3, I love this concept of thin slices of joy, finding little things in your day that bring you joy and taking notice of them. Things that happen to all of us every day, like slipping into freshly washed bed sheets, a child's hand in yours, that first sip of coffee in the morning, seeing a blue sky, seeing a bird outside the window, that colleague who greets you with a lovely smile. Taking notice of these thin slices of joy make a massive difference to our well-being. And when we start to take notice of them, we can then start to craft our days to have more of them. So joy on demand. One of my thin slices of joy is a really good cup of coffee in the morning. Drink it mindfully. I take notice of how nice the coffee is, how beautiful the mug is. And this is my joy on repeat. My takeaways are the things that can make us feel better don't need to cost money. They don't need to take time. We just need to be intentional about them. And finally, if you are struggling, please, please, please do not struggle alone. Please seek help. Please talk to somebody. Practitioner Health is here if you are a health or care professional. We are here to look after you and care for you and treat you.
Thank you so much, Helen. It's been such a great episode. So thank you so much for taking the time. I know how busy you are, so we really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Choice Space podcast. I hope this conversation has offered a little more room to pause, breathe, and find your own way forward. We've linked all the ways you can connect with Helen and how to access NHS Practitioner Health in the show notes. If today's episode has been helpful, please download, follow, and share with someone else. who might value the space as well. I'd love to have you with me for the next episode. Until then, take care and keep making space for what matters most. This episode was edited by Elle Dixon.